From the time that I've worked in engineering education, I've always worked with first year students. So what sparked me was always how students transitioned, how they were coping with the difference between high school and university.
For the students to truly understand, you have to think with them. You know, you have to observe what's going on in your class, and that becomes part of your way of teaching.
But some of the students that are clearly not following, you want to do something to try and get them back on track, to get them interested.
The turning point for me came as I sat in staff meetings and people were complaining, students never attend lectures, students never participate unless it's for marks. And I thought to myself, but that's weird because I never see that. My students participate even though there are no marks. And I think that for me was that there was this big disconnect.
The first observation, I would think that I had people expecting all the answers from me, that I knew everything and that I could write everything that I think.
I was curious why some of my students are better prepared in their final year compared to others.
Social issues, cultural issues, all of those things.
I think the challenge that is common in engineering is that of high attrition rates. And as a lecturer, sometimes you feel helpless.
My challenge was that they had studied a couple of years before meeting me, and then I thought that we could actually use that as a stepping point to develop what I had to teach them, but it was not forthcoming. So that was a challenge that I actually faced. That was actually the reason I started exploring all these tools, because I was trying to shift some ownership to the student's hand.
I think my first response to that was to look at my own subject, what I could do in my own subject to accommodate or address differences in students' ability, backgrounds, etc., etc.
I started asking them what they're experiencing, and then I started looking at how what they are doing is different to what the other students are doing.
When I realized that my teaching practices were not necessarily effective for all the students, my first step was really to talk to others in the department, and those more senior in me. Now, I got different opinions from them and different approaches.
Actually, at some point, kind of when I started my research journey, I asked my boss, I said to him, give me a big class with lots of students where everybody's failing, and let's see how I can transfer what I was doing in the small class to the big class. So that's kind of where it all started for me.
It all started with kind of customized assessment. That means I would produce maybe the same assessment in 3 different things, but the paperwork was too much. That was a little bit of my first step towards that, making sure that you're actually reflecting and on what you have in front of you. I don't mind if you speak to a friend, but at least you take ownership of what is in your own space and so on. That was a little bit of a challenge that I have, and I think that could actually be my first step towards that.
I try to reflect on my work and also looking at the throughput. How many students do I have who graduate? For example, our 2-year diploma, advanced diploma qualifications, how many of my students actually graduate? It's something that I always take stock of and see if I'm really doing the right thing. Why is it that students fail? What can I do to help them pass and cross over?
I think the easiest point for me in my teaching environment was when we did projects. So that was an opportunity to look beyond my subject. So how we address that in the projects, how we looked at students' different backgrounds. It's not as easy to delve into other people's subjects But the projects gave me an opportunity to do that, and also to raise that with other colleagues in a project environment.
I was just thinking of, you know, we do comprehensive moderation reports for each subject at CPUT. So you actually list the questions that students struggle with. So you also put like suggested solution. This semester I just implemented one of the solutions I've done, and I realized that now I'm marking this, their exam scripts, they did well on that question, which used to be very difficult, that's PLC programming. So because they did the practical on that, they found it very easy to answer exam questions on the same topic.
I tried some really radical things, and I really tried to go all out and throw everything on its head. I mean, I had a test where they had to fill in, it was almost, so people laughed at me, it almost looked like a school test, you know, with fill in the missing columns, and we had like a crossword puzzle, but like a cross number puzzle. And I like just try to make it more fun. I made the students do posters. They had to build little Stirling engines using CDs, and it really was fun. And I think maybe not to the same extent, but there was definitely a change in the way students learned without question.
Well, then I started, I had a colleague who was from Education Innovation, and she came to me about the project, the drone project, where I saw this weird phenomena. And then she asked me questions, and she told me things about the things that I'm applying that I didn't realize I was applying. And I became curious about how these things, these theories and processes that she was describing, if I understood them and if I applied them with knowing them, if it could make a different impact on my students.
Well, in a nutshell, I think this is the reason actually I've been on this platform, just trying to kind of, I can navigate with you, but I want you to take the driver's seat and be the driver here out of the background and everything that you know already. You're not a blank slate. There's something that you bring, and I want you to use that so that we build something together. I think that was more or less the idea.
I think reflection was just endemic. It was something that I did all the time. So I would always, whenever I tried something new, I'd always look at what the markers were that would be indicators to me of how that new initiative went down with the students. So I think it's just something that's always been, you know, with me.
Through these audits, you keep on learning, because the EXA, for example, gives you feedback on your performance. Then you can work on that feedback to prepare for the next audit that, of course, running 4-year cycle.
So reflection, both structured and unstructured approaches, and I use that both for my own reflection and for encouraging the class to reflect on their practices.
I didn't know that you can actually learn about teaching or lecturing. I was a lecturer then, and I just found it fascinating that there are not many people who know how to lecture out there. And maybe I may be one of them. I may be an engineer, of course, by profession, but if I'm going to work as a lecturer, what is my contribution? Do I really know how to deliver what I have? What are the skills that are required? And the teaching styles that I can use for teaching and learning.
And I found what worked for me was to attend some of the academic support programs. That's my first engagement with learning more about teaching.
Yeah, so when I did my TDP, it was, of course, for 1 year. And, of course, I didn't glean as much of the skills that I intended to as I got. But, of course, it was an eye-opening program. And when I found out that UCT now is working with, is it Virginia Tech, they are starting PhD in engineering education. I realized that was an opportunity for me to actually pursue a PhD in engineering education.
Well, I attended some courses on improving education and understanding about pedagogy. And from that was really a starting point for me to get into more practice on writing for publication in the education, in education field.
Engineering, critical thinking is often equated to problem solving. So that's why I'm doing a phenomenographic study about how engineering students experience critical thinking, and in that the outcome of the study would be the different ways in which they experience critical thinking.
So I realized that when it comes to teaching and learning, it's not just you having a qualification and you say, I'm going to work as a teacher or as a lecturer. You need to develop yourself on how to become an engineering educator.
So to write in the way that the field is anticipates, that was largely about reading in the area.
So I've got involved in several international communities, and then get involved in SASEE and with the engineering, Bringing Life to Engineering curricular group. And that enables me to connect with people every week, every day that are involved in engineering education and scholarly practice.